Afternoon, So, yes, Gerard, you may start now.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, well, madam, it looks like you're bored as a whole program of work in your back.
Yes.
Let me share my screen. Okay, so we continue, I guess here, yes. Okay, so we are continuing the course with examples of using the various tools, especially the segmenter. So I assume at this point that you have read this elementary lesson on the Vikramacharita story in corpus mode of the heritage site, and that you have tried to use the heritage segmenter on the original sentences in order to retrieve the analysis provided by in the lesson. The lesson actually gives indications on how to understand the tagging, which may be used as heuristics on how to drive the segmentation process. We shall today study a few of these heuristics and how they relate to the grammar lessons about the syntax of Sanskrit. I shall begin by a warning about Sanskrit corpus. There are actually many styles of Sanskrit. So, for instance, the sutra style is very terse. It's used for the philosophical works that start a tradition, or technical works like Ashtadhyayi for grammar. So this style consists in short aphorisms. These are really formal sentences, like a mathematical formula, whose meaning must be studied from commentaries. Typical. I talked 2 days ago about this Dhatupata entry for root kur. It's do kring karani. This cryptic message has to be decoded specially as a PRSM, where P is a prefix marker to the root. Here it's do. R is the bare root stem. Here kur. And S is a suffix marker to the root. Here ny. Meaning that it would admit Atmane voice. And finally, M is the meaning of the root. In ordinary Sanskrit, in the locative, here karani, thus in the sense of doing. This utmost concision of expression of sutra style is due to the requirement that the whole grammar could be entirely memorized. This is noted with humor in this Subhashita. In my citations corpus, I have many Subhashitas, that is, the proverbs, which actually refer to grammarians. This is a little bit unusual if you look at text of Old French or Old English. You find all kinds of stories about people running mills or kings or tailors or whatever, but you don't have stories about grammarians. In Sanskrit, you have lots of stories about grammarians. So here it is. Arda Mahasra Lagawena Putrotsavam Manyante Vayakaranaha. So grammarians, they they like the birth of a son, but they still prefer the saving of half a matra. So, you know, so it's making fun of a grammarian who's, you know, so serious about the lightness of his sutras that he is more happy saving half a matra than from the birth of his son.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
Well, meaning of this, what I have heard is the saving of half a mora is something like the birth of a son. They enjoy saving of half a mora as if they have given birth to a son.
As if, okay, so maybe I'm exaggerating. Okay, so perhaps we should not spend too much time on this because Maniante is a complex construction.
Right.
Yes. But if you forget the Vyakarana, see, I think this means that the instrumental is preferred to the accusative here in the value. Okay, let us not spend too much time on that. Thank you for your remark, Madam. I don't know where I'm going. Yes. And here we were. Okay, let's not spend too much time on sutra style, but there are many styles that are very peculiar and that you should not expect to be in the reach of our tools. So for instance, Vedic is mostly out of the range of our tools because of its complex syntax with floating prepositions not glued to the verbs and other peculiarities and the use of complex senses. Now, commentaries. Commentaries use a conventional style to analyze the commented text, both in its grammatical structure and its interpretation according to a given school. They often use complex logical argumentation, which is couched in a technical notation called Navyanyaya. Navyanyaya is a new style of logic. And this style uses very long compounds, and their understanding demands special training. Here is an example. Okay. Ramanishta putratwani rupita pitratwan dasharataha. Okay, so what does that mean? It means dasharata, yes, the quality of father on account of the quality of son, which is assigned to Ram. Okay, so it's a very tortuous way of saying that Dasarata is a father, because we know that Rama is its son. Okay, so but look at this compound that has 5 segments, and in Navyanyaya you can have a full page which is just one compound. So let us not go into too much detail of this Navyanyaya. If we want more teaching on Navyanyaya, then we can ask Professor Arjun, who's a specialist of that. Okay, so now let us turn to more usual literature. Actually, literature uses rarely prose, and most often poetic or epic works use verses in many meters. For instance, Ramayana uses the shloka format of 4 padas of 8 syllables. Now beware of these padas. See, you have a long A here. It's vriddhi of pada. It doesn't mean a word here. It means a quarter. So here it's 4 quarters of the shloka. And each has 8 syllables. In this style, the punctuation mark danda, that is this bar for the half shloka, is not a syntax delimiter and merely indicates pause in the recitation, avasana, and thus absence of sandhi in the text. So it influences the phonetics, but that's about it. The double danda, which is also called purna virama, full stop, it separates shlokas, but it may not indicate the end of the sentence, which may stretch over 2 shlokas. So in this style, the text looks like a series of poems, but these poems are not always independent, so they chain with each other, usually through pronouns. Thus, although often a shloka is a self-contained sentence, it may happen that a shloka is composed of 2 sentences or more, or even that several shlokas compose a complex sentence. And even the problem of sentence recognition is hard enough to be beyond automatic treatment by computer at present. And by the way, this is true also of a language like English, because the full stop is ambiguous as a typographical marking, since it can end an abbreviation, and it's not always easy to tell abbreviation from end of sentences. We give this as a warning that one should not always expect that a piece of text constitutes a sentence, even if it corresponds to a poetic unit. However, the segmentor does not care. It will undo sandhi of whatever piece of text in terminal sandhi is given as input, and it will respect danda sandhi isolation. Now, Professor Kulkarni presented 2 ways to discuss a sentence grammatically, using a paraphrase, a notion of paraphrase in prose syntax, Anvaya. Thus, Dandanvaya explains structurally a sentence by translating it in prose with a canonical order of its constituents. Usually for the agent, pratama, it should belong then the complements in their various vibhaktis, and finally the verb. So this is the canonical example, which you must have seen many times already. Dasharatha putraha Ramaha Ayodhya nagare koshat Ashtana Brahmanaya Dhanam Dadati. Ram, the son of Dasharatha, as we know from the previous example, in the city of Ayodhya, from his purse, with his hand, gave to the Brahman some money. Okay, so here this is kind of an artificial example, of course. It uses all the possible vibhaktis. We shall return to this example in a moment. Now, of course, this kind of presentation is appropriate for explaining the sentence by reordering logically the words so that coordinating phrases are grouped. Here in the example, we have grouped here Dasharata Putraha and Ramaha. Both are in Pratama and they are grouped together. And the phrase structure is explicit, on which semantic roles may be assigned unambiguously. A simple sentence is thus explained canonically as I've called this kind of crazy notation, which extend the usual SOV notation of linguists. I say it's subject, adverbs, object, and verb. See, so I've put a specific role for the subject, which is in Pratama, and the object in Vitiya, and all the others have regrouped as adverbs. There may be adverb, there may be also some arguments of the verb. So this is consistent with the so-called SOV nature of the language. The verb usually is at the end. Actually, in real text, that is outside of commentaries literature, you will almost never meet the actual sentences in this format. Or if you do, it will rather smack of boring style. Don't expect Kalidas to write in Dandandwaya style. On the contrary, he will slowly distill padas in the sentence in a mysterious order. And it is only at the end that we will get the crucial last piece of the puzzle. And you will accept the meaning in some kind of flash of insight, which is theoretized as spata. All of a sudden, the meaning of the sentence is revealed when you get the whole sentence. Thus, this method is hardly helpful in reading corpus, and the Kandaranvaya must be resorted to. It consists in spotting further verb and in recursively filling its successive desires, akansha, thus progressively revealing the karaka, semantic structure. For each karaka, we spot the head of the phrase, its visheshya, then its versus qualifiers, visheshana, which must agree with it. This analytical method may proceed by phrasing questions, asking for the successive desires, that is the dependencies. This kind of dialectical argumentation is called katambutini. We call it also the Socratic method, in analogy with Socrates teaching his students by asking questions. This is the main heuristic that I used in the Vikramacharita story. Now we may relate the two methods. The Kandaranvaya method consists in progressively constructing the Dandanvaya by reading the sentence pratilomena from right to left in the reverse order. See, we look first for the verb, and the verb is usually at the end. So we proceed actually on the sentence from right to left. Thus, we capitalize on the general postfix nature of Sanskrit, which applies not only to identifying dependencies issued from semantic roots, the karaka, but also to the ones issued from upapadas. So, for instance, saha demands, saha means together with. So saha is prefixed by the person you're together with. And this person must be in tritiya. In the story, we saw Ada. Ada is behind, below. And so in the story, you have the coffers who are below the bed, and it uses shashti, genitive. So this is general. These upapadas are grammatical words that usually take their argument the preceding word in a specific vibhakti. Also remark that the grammar uses systematically suffixes, this pratyaya for derivation. So all the derivation on the strings proceeds from right to left. So Sanskrit understanding by reading backwards, it's similar. I mean, for the technically minded readers, it's similar to what we call reverse Polish notation. That was used by early computer scientists who evaluate expressions using a stack, and which was used by early desk calculators. Remember, probably most of you have not even seen these machines. You would compute 5 plus 17, and this multiplied by 43. By typing in sequence, then first 5, then 17, then pressing the plus, then 43, then pressing the multiply. So each operation taking its arguments in the stack. Now, it may be felt awkward to read backwards a sentence, which after all is spoken in a left to right manner. But the stack analogy is relevant when one thinks of the functioning of the short-term memory, where recent cognitions have priority over more remote ones. Well, this is of my own thinking, so maybe you should take this with a grain of salt. Let us show now how this method may be applied to our canonical example. So we are coming back to Dasharatha. And on the way, we shall use this Katambutini by going pratilomena in reverse gear with the use of supplementary heuristics, the one I called Matyanyaya. The longest segment wins over shorter ones. So I don't expect to find this term in grammatical books. This is a peculiarity of the segmenter, that the padas are represented by rectangles, and that our display interface manages to put the longest segment on top of the shorter ones. And a useful technique also is what I call cherry picking your relevant lexical item. I'm not sure how to translate cherry picking in Sanskrit. I've found this bimba samudara. Bimba is this red fruit, which is alluded to a lot in poetry. The beautiful women are said that their lips are like the fruit of the bimba. So this is a substitute for cherry in Sanskrit. We shall also use what I call positive thinking, meaning by that spurious negations, which are apostatized by Sandhi engine, have to be cancelled with the red cross of our segmenter. And of course, more generally, we shall use common sense. That is notions of yogyata and sanidhi, as Madam has discussed. That is compatibility of sense and also proximity. You build sentences, you build phrases preferring matching items that are close to each other. Now with the provision that poets do not feel bound by these restrictions. So this often works, but not always. Okay, so let us go back to our kind of canonical sentence. Okay, oh, see, it does not show as I showed at the beginning of the course today. I was looking in corpus mode. So in corpus mode, the tagging has been frozen. That is, we have used our interface in order to find the unique tagging, and then we have stored it in the database of citations. Here I'm calling the segmenter on the full sentence, and look, it has almost 1 lakh solutions. Yes, but and look, if I draw on this page, you have all this crazy debris, which are, fighting for space, but they are going to be killed, are going to be killed by the law of the fish. We have the big fish on the top, and they are going to win. Okay, so first we look for the verb, and here the verb is at the end, and it's red. Recta, yes, because it's ting. And here you have the choice between dadati and dadati, whatever. The law of the fish tells you don't think, you take the biggest one. He gives. And now this is unambiguous. So we go, he gives what? He gives money. He gives money to whom? Oh, to the Brahman. How did he give money? Oh, Astena, by the end. So here, see, the law of the fish. You don't look in the dictionary for all these little particles, yes, or this vocative. Obviously, the big one here, it wins from the end. Similarly here, law of the fish, koshat. Oh. So now here the software did not manage to percolate the Nagare at the upper line. And so the whole thing is a little bit cluttered, but it's not fair. Okay, and obviously it's not a vocative. Yes, it's Nagare. And now all this, see what happened? See? All this crazy nonsense of small words, it just vanished. Okay, including this ray. Nagare is fighting for all this.
Now here, can it be explained why that green one is not to be selected? Why blue one is taken? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, let me see. Nagare, it's a vocative in dual of the neuter Nagara. So it would be, oh, you two cities. Okay, so it could make sense in some contexts, yes. But here it looks highly implausible.
Thank you.
This is why I've dissociated the vocatives from the other vibhakti. That they are rare and they are not really part of the sentence. They are interjections. They are addresses. They don't participate to the structure of the sentence. It's more like scenic indications in theater. Okay, it's an address. So it makes sense only when you're talking in dialogue, when you're talking to an interlocutor, and then it is his name or his quality or whatever. And then the vocative makes it. So most of the vocatives that will appear in the interface should be killed. Yeah. But if you kill this vocative, you will still have all the nonsense that compete with the Nagare. So it's much better to click on the Nagare blue, and now it's cleaned up. Okay, so you have to think of this segmenter interface as some kind of electronic game. Yes, we started with 1 lakh solutions. Yes, and now we are reduced to 128 solutions. See? So most of the solutions were composed of nonsense particles. Okay, so with common sense, you will get the right segment. Oh, now here this is interesting. See, so we are answering the question. You know, where is the for the moment, I've been going strictly backwards. Here, I could have decided to look for the subject of the dati, that is for the agent of this action of giving. And then I would have found it here in RAM. Here, I'm going strictly right to left. So I don't know the name of the agent, but I know enough of it from the conjugation of this verbal form. The dati, I know that it's a singular, yes, and it's a third person, that is pratama, first person in Sanskrit. Okay. And now here I have this problem of deciding between Ayodhya as initial of Ayodhya Nagari, and but if I chose that, look what happens. That this negation percolates. It's necessary in order to have the long A in Ayodhya Nagari. Yeah. So it would be, this means invisible, the invisible non-city. I mean, this doesn't make sense, yes. So you want the long A. You want the long A, but you have the choice between building the compound Ayodhya Nagari, the city called Ayodhya, or taking Ayodhya standalone and then have two padas, Ayodhya and Nagari. But now Ayodhya, yeah, see, it's in the nominative pratama, okay? So you would have that Ayodhya is the agent of the dati, and then it will clash with Rama because they don't have the same gender. So quick reasoning will tell you that this is no good. Okay, so the good one is Ayodhya. Here we go. Oh, but the A has not been killed yet. Okay. It's why? Because it's possible. See, if you make this negative compound anagari, a non-city, then this will join while sandhi with the A and gives A. Okay, so it's an artifact of sandhi undoing that you will find very often, this single negation, which is a spurious negation. Okay, so that's what I call positive thinking. Positive thinking, you don't need this negation. Okay, so the A or an should be kept only when there is a negative meaning meant in the sentence. So very, very often you'll find this A and automatically you will kill it. Now we come to this choice between Ramaha and Rama. So this is a very rare route. So we know that it's Ramaha, and now we have the agent, it's Ram. But Ram is in a position with this other pada, which says son of Dasharatha. And Dasharatha, I will pick, this is cherry picking. I say, oh yes, of course, this is Dasharatha. It's a Dasha followed by Rata, which is possible. This is the origin of the word Dasharatha. It's the compound of Dasha and Rata, 10 chariot. We shall come back to it. So here we know Dasharatha. Yes, so we cherry pick it. Okay, all right. So that's an example. And if you understand the spirit of this using the segmenter, then you can come back to the Vikramacharita story and understand how I found the proposed tagging. Let me kill this window. So cherry picking happens frequently with proper names. Proper name that you may expect to find in the story. If it's Mahabharata, you'll expect to see Arjuna and Krishna and so on. But there is a difficulty in dealing with proper names in Sanskrit. First of all, there is no distinguishing typographical sign like we have the initial capital in English. Then the written representation is the faithful encoding of a speech enunciation. That's it. Okay, so the language is, first of all, an oral production. Yes, writing is a secondary artifact. Another difficulty is that proper names often denote. Thus, telling Krishna from the black color adjective is not always easy to decide just on grammatical considerations. Now, some of these names are actually accommodated by grammatical construction for patronyms. So in the grammar, you have many tadita suffixes that serve this purpose. With various meanings like son of X, descendant of X, etc. Also, doing simply Vriddhi of Dasharatha, sorry, this is Sh, Dasharatha, one obtains Dasharatha, issued from Dasharatha. And thus, Dasharatha is a common designation of Ram. Vasudev is one of Krishna. Okay, so you have to be careful when reading. Okay? Dasharatha is the father, and Dasharatha is Ram, the son. Similarly, Vasudev is the father, and Vasudev is the one of Krishna. So this Vriddhi is a general way to build an adjective from a noun. With the meaning concerning this notion or derived from this notion. Then many names are actually titles like Bhatta, master, that you must recognize as such, like in Kumarila Bhatta, which is master Kumarila. His actual name is just Kumarila, and Bhatta is a title. But of course, a commentator of Kumarila will use simply the title Bhatta in his commentary to refer to him, the master. But the most common situation is that the name of a person will be a Sanskrit compound that has an ordinary denotation, like Devadatta, which means datta given by God, Deva, which is identical in its structure to this name appears in most languages. In French, it's Dieudonné. Then you have Emmanuel, Guillaume, etc. Many grammatical examples use Devadatta as a dummy. Here are our standard example. We use Devadatta. This is a dummy, like we use in English Dundo. Or the cryptography specialists, they use Alice and Bob. So we know by convention that they are the two actors in the secret transmission. Yeah, Alice has a secret and Bob is trying to steal it. Indian philosophers discussing the problem of denotation actually use a specially coined name, Pitta, to avoid the problem. So it's very unusual. So you know that you are not speaking about one specific person, but just about some hypothetical person who is wondering about some philosophical problem. When the name is a compound, it's not always easy to distinguish it as a proper name rather than an epithet. Like Pitambara. Pitambara, who wears a yellow clothes. This is a typical Bahuvri compound. It could be Vishnu, but it could be also any person dressed in yellow in the story. Sometimes the compound is not regular, like it may incur retroflexion, like Ramayana. So it's the Ayana, the travel of Ram. But here, this is a frozen compound. Retroflexion has crossed the pada boundary. Or sometimes it's not even dropping the vibhakti, like Yudhishthira. Yudhi is actually a locative. And so here we have an example of a compound that for which you do not remove the vibhakti of the first component. In grammatical terminology, it's called a look, not look. Look in the Paninian suffix in order to do lopa, to delete the end of the word. Okay, so Yudhishthira is firm in battle, but you will recognize from the fact that it's a look and that it has retroflexion that it's a proper name. But the general case is an ordinary compound leading to ambiguities. By the way, what kind of a compound is Dasharata? It's not a rata, a chariot. So it must be a Bahuvri compound. But it is not just a possessive compound. He who has 10 chariots. It doesn't mean that Dasharata is a rich man with 10 chariots. It means much more. It means that his chariot span the 10 directions of space. And as Dasharata is such a powerful king that he can roam his realm in the 10 directions of space, because he conquered all the earth. Now, here is an example of difficulty. The sage is called antelope horn because he has an antelope horn on his head. What is this? Let us look at this sentence in our little corpus. See, this is the story of a sage, Mahatman. This is the same construction that the epithet of Gandhi, Mahatman. And it is called Rishya Shringam. It is called Rishya Shringam. Why? So Rishya is antelope and Shringa is horn. So Rishya Shringam is an antelope horn. Here we have it as a compound, Rishya Shringam, the antelope horn. but here it's whole because it's the name of the sage. Okay, so here I've made the tagging in such a way that the two occurrences of the same pada, Rishya Shrigam, they are represented here as one pada because it's a proper name, and here as two padas. Yes, because it's a property that, so let us understand it. Okay? On the head of him, there was an antelope horn. Rajan is a vocative of Rajan. Yes, so it's a person who's telling the king about this guy named Rishya Shrigam, and the king is asking, why is he called this way? And this is the explanation. See, sir, he had an antelope horn on his head. And that's why he is called Rishya Shrigam. More precisely, he happened to be called Rishya Shrigam. So let us skip this iti evam. Iti marks that the preceding is a quotation, Rishya Shrigam. And this is even. And from that point on, he was called Rishya Shrigam. So he is a pronoun which has as antecedent Mahatmanam, the sage. Yes. And here you have this anaphora of the same sage, which is this genitive of him. Of him, there was a horn on the head. And that's why it's called. Okay, so this is a more complex sentence. Here we have this use of pronouns. We have a slick use of pronouns. And the three pronouns are the third pronoun, se, which is the third person in English, he. Personal pronoun, but it may be used also as a pronoun talking about an action. So here, tena is instrumental of tad. Instrumental of tad. And here this tad is the whole preceding speech. So it's for this reason, yes, where this sa and this tasya, they all refer to him, this sage. Okay, so this was a kind of long explanation of this verse, just to understand situations in which you have to understand a compound in its ordinary meaning, and situation where it is actually a proper name. Okay, let us forget this example and we come back to our simple scheme of I call a simple sentence. Subject, object, verb, and then some additional padas, which may be interpreted as supplementary arguments of the verb, like dative for a verb of giving, or ablative for fearing, or it may be just adverbs. Many accusatives actually are not denoting karma, but just some kind of adverbial construction. Now, this simplistic scheme makes a number of hypotheses. It assumes that there is a final verbal form in the active voice, Kartari Prayoga, that the verb is transitive and that demands an object in the accusative, Vitiya, that the agent is expressed with this S, and thus that there is a subject in the nominative, yes. But actually, the agent may not be expressed explicitly, since the verbal suffix expresses at least its number and person. So if it's obvious from the context, if you have a story and you have some topic, which is a person, and you don't need to repeat his name, yes, so the subject is not mandatory in this case. And if the verb is not transitive, it does not need an object, but it may need other arguments in the dative for verbs of giving, in the ablative for object of fear, etc. Furthermore, all these actants may be expressed not just as single padas, but as phrases of padas in agreement. And all the padas, they may not occur one after the other, like Dasharutra, Patra, Putra, Ramaha. Okay, you may move the components. So the padas may be reshuffled in different orders. So the phrases will then become discontinuous and even almost arbitrarily dislocated. So this is the general scheme, yes, but by permutation, since you have the vibhakti, you have a lot less ambiguity than in English. In English, when the cat eats the rat, the mouse, cat and mouse are in the same case. You don't have case in Sanskrit. Yes? So their role, their semantic role, must be obtained from the precise order of the constituent in the sentence. So now in English it's not SOV, it's SVO, but this order is rigid. You cannot swap the subject and the object. Otherwise the mouse will eat the cat. See? All right. Okay, so this is just a notation that you have to take with a grain of salt. Yes. And all this discussion about subject, it assumes that you're in Kartari Prayoga, in active voice. But if the sentence is the passive, Karmani Prayoga, it is now the object, Karma, that may be expressed in the nominative, Pratama, and the agent, Karta, must appear in the instrumental, Tritiya. The question then arises of what it means to be in the passive for an intransitive verb that does not have karma. Then the sentence expresses an impersonal statement. And this is restricted to singular and neuter. Pratama Purusha. So here is an example. Asyate Devadatena. Let us try that in our segmenter. The as it's root as, yeah, which is to sit, to be seated. Okay, so here we have a little bit of a problem because it's ambiguous. It could be also a causative of two different roots, but here it just present singular passive in the third person, that is pratama of as, which is to sit. So so here, law of the fish, devadatta, by devadatta. See, asyate devadatta. So so if you try to translate this word for word in English, it will be some kind of bizarre statement like by devadatta, it is seated. Okay, so it's an impersonal statement, but actually it should be translated just as devadatta is sitting. Okay, so you must be used to see this kind of impersonal construction in the passive of a verb that is intransitive. So it's some kind of impersonal statement. This is very usual. Okay, so as I said, it should be translated simply as devadatta is sitting rather than an awkward. It is being seated by devadatta. Even though this sentence has no subject and no object, it is perfectly acceptable in Sanskrit as expressing an action and its agent. Okay, so you should ponder about this example and the one that we are going to see now. Now, instead of having devadatta sitting idly, let's have him cook rice. So in the active voice, we get devadatta odanam pachati. Sorry about this diacritics here. Let's take it Devanagari. There. Right, this is Devanagari. Okay, law of the fish. Here this is present participle genitive, and we know from the grammar that this cannot appear standalone, so it must be pachati. He cooks. He cooks what? He cooks rice, odanam, and by the way, odanam is rice, but tandula also is rice, but there are very different kinds of rice. Yes, you have only one word in English for rice, but tandula is the grain of rice, whereas odanam is rice cooking. It comes from the root is water. So this is a soft rice cooking. Yes. And who's cooking is devadatta. So here we have the standard order of subject, object, verb. Yes. Agent, karman, verb, action. Okay, so it's some kind of canonical way of saying in the active voice that devadatta is cooking rice. Yes, but actually you can give a permutation of the three components, and that you will get 8 equivalent sentences for devadatta is cooking rice. Pachati, Devadatta, Odanam, the Visarg goes out because of the Sandhi rule. So our segmenter is careful to note this space as possibly intervening in the Sandhi. These are not independent. We have two chunks, and this chunk is decomposed into padas. Okay, so we have 8 possible permutations, like Pachatyodadam, Devadatta. And the passive, we get an equivalent construction in the passive is now Odanam is the subject. Okay, and with proper cleaning up, we have Pachate. Now it's passive of this wood patch cooking. Okay. So and now Odana, which is the Karman, yes, is in Pratama, because we are in passive. Yes. Now, who's the agent? The agent is Devadatta, but it must be an instrument of Tritiya. Okay, so here is an equivalent way of saying that Devadatta is cooking rice. And again, we can give all permutations of these 3 elements. And so we have 8 permutations where now Odana is in the nominative, Pratama. Okay, but this is not the end of the story. This is a little bit more complicated. But I'm mentioning it now, nonetheless, because this is a situation that may occur. It is cleaning it. Okay. Odanam Pachate Devadatina. Okay. So what is the problem here? The problem is that now this Odanam, which was analyzed as Dvitiya in the active voice, it may actually be considered Pratama. Yes, because it's neuter. So you may wonder, oh, but is Odana neuter or masculine? So the mystery is that it's both. It's Ardacha di Gana. There is a Gana in the grammar, a group of words, which starts with Ardacha, which is a half strophe in poetry, and so which is kind of prototypal substantive that can be used both in the masculine and in the neuter. Okay, so there is a special sutra 2431 that licenses such pradipadikas to be used in masculine as well as in neuter gender. So Odanam is thus the correct nominative form. Okay, so here you see I'm underlying, several difficulties at once. It's how to distinguish passive construction from active constructions, and how not to be fooled with words that have the same form in Pratama and Vitiya, like Odanam. Okay, so you have to be aware of all these difficulties. And now the rice may also cook by itself, in which case the Vedanta can get back sitting, yes, and now we get Odana Pachyate. Rice is cooking. Rice is cooking by itself. Thus, the verb patch has become intransitive, and its object becomes the agent of the action. Okay? It's like rice had the will to soften. Okay? So patch it uses both senses of cooking and of maturing, like a fruit is ripening. You use patch also. So you use this kind of construction. So this kind of usage is explained by another sutra, 3187. Oh, it's called karma karta. It's an object that acts as an agent. Okay? So you have also to understand this grammatical difficulty, yes? And further beware. Now, if you swap the two padas, if you say pachyate odana, then by Sunday it becomes pachyata odanaha with erasure of a. Okay, so here on this very simple example of the Devadatta is cooking rice, I've mentioned several difficulties in understanding grammatical construction. So it's not as simple as one thinks, you know, subject, object, verb. Now, moving towards more sophisticated sentence structures than the simple S and verb, object, verb scheme and its various permutations. We get stories which are built again along some scheme which I express as L ab star simple. So L is an absolutive locative clause giving the general circumstance of the episode. So it's called absolute locative. And this absolute locative is not really part of the sentence, it's part of the context. So you don't have sharing of the actants of the main clause and of the absolutive clause. This is what is meant by the absolutive terminology. Okay, so it gives the context of the action. And now you're telling the story by a succession of absolutive clauses. These are these constructions from a root with toi or ya when the verb admits some preverb. Okay, so it's typical for a story to have these successions of absolutives and that end with a simple sentence. Now where the verb is expressed with ordinary vibhakti, also called finite tense. So these absolutive clauses, they share the same agent than the main final clause. Okay, so usually you translate these kind of sentences as a succession of action. You know, after entering the room and the cat ate the mouse. So you will translate that the cat enters the room and he eats the mouse. So you will undo this sequence of absolutives as a sequence of simple actions. Now you have to understand this sharing of the agent. The agent is shared in the same agent who does all these actions. Yeah. So this agent will often be the subject of the main clause expressed in the nominative inactive voice. But if this main clause is expressed in the passive, karmani prayoga, then its agent will be in the instrumental, tritiya, and then the sentence will be untranslatable directly in English, like in this example here. I think Amba Madam discussed this example already. Vanad Gramam Adya Upetya Odanaha Ramena Apache. So the rice is cooked by Ram. But after that, Ram came back today from, came to the village from the wood. Okay, so it's impossible to translate directly. Yeah. Coming from the wood to the village. By Ram, the rook was cooked. In English, it doesn't make sense, yes, because the rice is not coming from the wood. Yes, it's Ram. Okay, so so here you're not sharing the subject. The subject is Odana because it's in passive. What you're sharing is the agent, it's Ram. Okay, so you have to use some kind of paraphrase to translate that in English. I don't know how much we should do today. Let's try to talk a little bit about relative because it's a very common construction and we did not see it so far. I don't know if we'll be able to finish today, but let's try. A very common construction of linked sentences. So now we are going into more complex sentences than just one verb or these sequences of absolutives. It's a pair relative correlative. Typically, the relative pronoun ya or one of its forms or derivate is echoed in the other sentence by the correlative sa. This gives a form of implication, often associated with quantification. Any x is a y. Any x so that P of x verifies Q of x. Whenever P, we have Q. So all this kind of either implications or reasons. They are expressed with this kind of two sentences next to each other. So here are the kind of canonical example. Ya patet sa avnuyat. If you study, then you succeed. You progress in life, you succeed. So the tenses here are a little bit unusual. Path is to study, but this is the optative, patet. So optative translates as, it's a possibility. I mean, you may not study, then you will not succeed. Yeah? But here in this kind of conditional statement, then it's usual to use optative in the ya clause. He who studies, he succeeds. Okay, so here you have two independent sentences. Yes, and what they share is this link, the ya and the sa. So he who studies, he succeeds. In English, you make it with a relative, he who studies succeeds. Yeah? In Sanskrit, you make actually two different sentences. So each has its own agent. Yes, but they are linked by the fact that they are twins, the ya and the sa. Abnuyat is also optative of root ab. So this is a very common construction. And adverbs of time, space, and manner also have relative equivalent. So this construction is available in many guises. Here is with adverbs of manners. Yata, tata. Yata drishtam, tata diktam. This is part of instructions for a scribe on how to copy manuscripts. It says the way you see it, the way you read it, this is the way you should write it. So it's an advice to scribes. Don't try to correct a manuscript. You just copy the manuscript as is. Period. Okay, so this is the same kind of relative construction. Here is another one. Here it's a double construction. We have four sentences, and so we have two twins, and the two twins are these relative implicational structures. He who looks, he doesn't speak, and he who speaks, he doesn't see. So it's a common subashita. But see, here you recognize it easily. You recognize it easily in the interface because the pronouns are of this light blue color. So you see this pairing of the ya and the sa, and here of the ya and the sa similarly. So besides the co-reference of the two pronouns, the two connected sentences are independent. Thus, the relative and correlative pronoun, the ya and the sa, while agreeing in number and gender, they may wear a different case. Vibhakti may be different because it corresponds to their respective role of the common entity in the two sentences. I will end the course today by seeing a more complex example in which you have duplication of the relatives and correlatives, and then you have the pairing of time adverbs. Let me give you quickly the translation, and then we'll look at it more in detail. by many, Vasudha is property, is land. By many, land has been given, and by many, it has been taken care of. And then the rest of the sentence is yasya yada bhumi tasya tada palam. So this yasya is reduplication, which is insistence. Whenever. So whoever whoever takes care of the soil, he will get its fruit. So what is this crazy statement? This statement actually was found on a copper plate inscription dating from the 4th century. So, so this is the statement of donation of some land by the king. And so the king is saying, you know, if you take care of the land, then you will reap its fruits. It's almost a Marxist statement given by the king, which is why I like it. Okay, so I guess we're over time. So I will not go into this more complex example from Kalidas. Maybe we can do that on Saturday, tomorrow, if there is time. And I will stop here and entertain questions if there are any. And I'm sure there will be many. Tara?
Yes, good evening, Professor. Thank you. My question actually has to do with, it's a quick question which could be answered on Saturday, but I'll pose it anyway. I was curious about Kalidasa's plays and whether we know whether he had a live audience and the plays were performed in real time, which means that while he has mysterious word order and complexity and he reveled in that, how would the audience have been so sophisticated to be able to understand right away? Because from the little English translations I've read, jokes are cracked. I mean, he cracks jokes. And will the audience laugh right away, or do they have to go home and study the play for 6 months, or is there just an imaginary audience? That's basically my curiosity, but I can wait till tomorrow.
I'm not really competent to answer this question meaningfully. I don't know enough about literature in general and Kalidas in particular. But yes, your question is a question I've been wondered also. Yes, how do you? So many of this court poetry is hard to understand. Yes, it's hard to understand, and it's so hard that even the courtiers who were very familiar with Sanskrit would have problem deciphering it or understanding the shlesha or whatever decoration or whatever allusion and so on. So these are poems that, first of all, you get their meaning better by telling them orally than reading them. Yes, because you have intonation. And with intonation, you can get the grouping of sentences also, and you have the all the deictic, the mimics, and so on, which help understanding a certain level of what the sentence means. But it's only by studying it carefully that you will notice alliterations, you know, like sometimes you have a succession of 10 lagu syllables, which is very unusual. So it needed a lot of work from the poet to have this kind of ta-ta-ta-ta-ta rendering. So only experts, you know, could dissert and progressively appreciate all the poetry. So your question is quite meaningful, especially for theater, because theater you're supposed to understand in real time. Yes, but theater has with it all the mimics and gestures and so on, which allow you to understand at least superficially what is going on in the action. So I will stop at that. And
thank you very much. That's helpful. Thank you.
Mohamed Adidi? G?
Yes, it's a very simple question, just to make sure I understand. So what do you mean by the phrase or the expression cherry picking?
The cherry picking was just when you read, you have this long sentence and you don't know where to start to understand it. Sometimes you have the name of a person that jumps to you. See, like in this Kalidas example, but it's a long sentence, so it needs. You have so here this is the sentence. Once it has been deciphered, analyzed, and stored in the corpus mode. Yes, but in the original sentence, you may find this Urvasi. Okay, and Urvasi, where the problem with going into this kind of explanation is that it jumps to your eye in Devanagari, if you know Devanagari. But for me, it's in Latin, so it jumps to me as Urvashi here. Yes. So if you see Urvashi, it's the name of a celestial damsel. Yes. So there is no confusion with any usual Sanskrit word. So you will click on Urvasi and this will clean up all the surrounding of this word. See, so instead of doing logically, looking at where is the verb or whatever, if you see Urvasi, you click on it. This is cherry picking, yeah? Or Kuber. Oh, yes, oh, so it's a story about Urvashi and Kuber. Okay, and so now you can start from this hint on how to understand the sentence. Urvasi, oh yes, she's Priyashaki, she's the friend of whom of us now. Our dear friend Urvasi. Yes. Sa. This sa, you match it with the ya. So now you know that you have two relative clauses. So this very long sentence, you can break it in two. The ya part the conditional up to here. Yes, and now you can start analyzing the second sentence, which is independent. See, just linked by the sound and the ya. Okay, so here I've used the idea of cherry picking. It's a word that jumps to your eyes, so to speak. Okay, so you don't have any question. So it's sort of grammatical consideration. Okay, it's more being familiar with methodology and other semiotics, and so you will use this kind of semiotic considerations in order to pick up words rather than going logically into the grammatical analysis. That's what I call cherry picking.
Okay.
It's my own terminology. You will not find that anywhere else. But
Thank you.
see, what we are doing here is not just grammatical analysis. It's use of tools that have their own interface and so on. So we are discussing in this kind of complex space where we have the literature, we have the grammar, but we have the tools, and there are various interfaces. So the strategies are like cherry picking. This is a strategy for using the interface rather than kind of a grammatical rule. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no more questions, Madam, are we having a question session tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow we will have. Tara again has raised her hand, so she has one more question.
I'm sorry that I should have put that down. I forgot. Thank you very much.
Okay. So yes, so tomorrow evening we will be meeting again at the same time, 6 o'clock in the evening. Okay. For the discussion session.
Very well. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.